Good evening, council, staff, and visitors. Thank you for joining us for the July 16th, 2026 regular meeting of the Fair Oaks Ranch City Council. The time is 6:30 p.m. and I will start with the roll call. Council, when I call your name, please say here present. Mayor Maxton.
Here.
Councilmember Stroop is not present. Councilmember Roden is not present. Councilmember Olvera. Councilmember Pearson. Councilmember Parker.
Present.
And Councilmember Swarik. With 5 of 7 members present, a quorum is declared.
Thank you, Amanda. Would everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That sounded good. Well, as a reminder to everybody that's here tonight, we do live broadcast this meeting. We'd like to welcome everybody that's joining us here in the council chambers and all of those that are joining us by the live broadcast. Because we are live broadcasting, I ask everybody to use the mic, for those that are here in the room, to use the mic if you have comments tonight. And the reason for that is if you make comments from your seat, the individuals that are listening by live broadcast cannot hear the comments. If you do get an opportunity to speak, I'd ask that you introduce yourself. And for residents, state whether you're a resident of Fair Oaks Ranch or not. Or if you're with an agency that's here as part of tonight's meeting, please state what agency you're from. And with that, we'll move on to our citizens to be heard. We had 2 individuals signed up for tonight. And just a reminder to everybody, as part of citizens to be heard, in accordance with the Open Meetings Act, council may not discuss or take any action on any item which has not been posted previously on the agenda. And then I ask all individuals that do speak, if you please limit your comments to 5 minutes. And Mr. Wall.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg, and City Council. My name is John Wall. I reside at 8025 Flagstone Hill Drive in the north part of the ranch. I've been a resident there for just over 31 years. And what I would like to speak to you tonight about, while it's fresh on our minds, is the flood event that we had yesterday. And I have provided Amanda with a couple of slides that I think she could put up for me. That's actually the last one I want to use, Amanda. There you go. This is a picture that I took yesterday of the low water crossing at Rolling Acres Trail in the Post Oak Creek. This was about 11 o'clock in the morning. And the next slide, please. This one, as you know, has a hazardous gate that automatically lowers when the water rises. This is the other end of Post Oak that affects the north side of the ranch. This is the intersect where Post Oak crosses Silver Spur. And just behind that pickup, if I'd known I was going to do this, I'd have taken a slide from behind the pickup. Usually you can get out through this area because Ventura Drive intersects Silver Spur about 100 yards from the bridge. And you can usually get to Ventura off of Silver Spur. Yesterday, it remained under about 2 feet of water for at least a couple of hours. And the next slide, please. The map. Whoop, maybe it didn't. That one didn't get uploaded? There it is. Okay, the area in blue is the area that was isolated. From about where Amanda's mouse is on Rolling Acres, that's that crossing of Post Oak. To the very bottom was where the intersection of Ventura and Silver Spur. That encompassed about 660 acres of Fair Oaks Ranch. There are approximately 230 to 235 lots and residences in that area. There's probably only a half a dozen vacant lots, so let's say 230 homes. And at 3 to 3.5 people per residence, That's about 700 to 800 people that were directly affected by this. And we were completely cut off. I know that there was a medical emergency on Silverspur, just a couple of houses down from that intersection at about 3:15 when I went by there, because there was a ambulance in the driveway, a police car, and a fire truck from the Bexar County. So if we were isolated back there, I would just like council to reconsider their vote from a couple of months ago when you decided not to raise the bridge at Rolling Acres Trail as part of the Rolling Acres Trail renovation. And now then, Amanda, if you go back to that first slide you had up, I don't want to present you with a problem without presenting you with a possible solution. And this is a picture of the bridge at Alway Road over Leon Creek. This is right behind the Silver Fox. Everybody knows where the Silver Fox is. This is a low-profile bridge that is probably about the approximate length that it would take to span that Rolling Acres crossing and get it up above the floods that we typically have. I will admit that yesterday in the 31 years was the only time I've ever seen Ventura flooded. But this is a possible low-profile solution. It's approximately 150 to 140 feet long, and that would fit just about the footprint that we would need at Rolling Acres. I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for being here tonight and providing the comments. And Mr. Prasadic.
I'm Harold Prasadic, and I'm a resident of Fair Oaks Ranch. There are 3 board positions that'll be open for the Municipal Development District, and once again, I've submitted my application. In the past, you've reappointed the incumbent board members without interview of other applicants, as far as I know. And I just suggest it's time to consider other citizens who show a willingness to serve. Perhaps term limits can be considered for board members. It's time to aggressively work towards putting the MDD funds to use. Now, I've attended most of the MDD meetings, including the one in which our attorney, Dan Santee, listed numerous methods to put the funds to use, including ways to have the funds repaid to the district. I was on the Gateway Design Committee, which used some of the funds, and I understand it's been the only use of the funds. Let's invigorate the board with some new members and new ideas, and let's make something happen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wall and Mr. Prasadic were the only 2 individuals that signed up to speak as part of citizens to be heard. Are there any other individuals here tonight that didn't get an opportunity to sign up that would like to speak? Okay, then we'll move on to our consent agenda. We have 3 items on the consent agenda tonight. First is the approval of the July 2nd, 2026 regular city council meeting minutes. Second, approval of a council member Stroop's absence from the July 16th, 2026 and the September 3rd, 2026 regular city council meetings. And last, approval of the first reading of an ordinance amending the City of Fair Oaks Ranch Code of Ordinance, Chapter 3, Building Regulations, Article 3.01, General Provisions, Section 3.01.018, driveways passing through drainage channel with amended requirements for driveways with culverts. Are there any council members that would like to remove any of these items from consent to consideration? Everybody's good? Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
Ruben, and a second.
Second.
Scott? All in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda is approved. And with that, we'll move on to our consideration item tonight that's on the agenda, which is the consideration and possible action approving a resolution authorizing a free tree giveaway as mitigation for removal of trees related to the Dietz Elkhorn Road water line and the GBRA shared pipeline projects. And Anthony, you gonna lead us through this one?
Yes, I will. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, and attendees. I am Anthony Liblick, the Environmental Program Manager for the city, and I am here to present to you the council item number 7, which can be found on pages 12 to 20 in your agenda packet. Here's a look at our agenda. I will give you a brief overview of both projects. I will then review the city's UDCs for tree mitigation requirements, go over the total number of trees to be removed for each project, and provide a staff recommendation. The Dietz Elkhorn Waterline project has been previously presented to the council. This project will extend a new 12-inch water main along Dietz Elkhorn Road to the Elmo Davis Plant Pump Station and to provide support to multiple parcels in the eastern side of the city. In order to complete this essential infrastructure upgrade, we are required to remove 4 protected trees and 1 heritage tree. The GBRA Shared Pipeline Project is an interlocal agreement with the city of Bernie to serve both the Bernie water plant and the city's new elevated storage tank. This project will install a new 16-inch water main along Ammon Road on the southern curve. In order to complete this project, we are required to remove 35 protected trees and 4 heritage trees along the right-of-ways and utility easements. The UDC's Section 8.8 defines the tree protection standards and states the requirements for removal and mitigation. Since these are city-led projects within utility easements and right-of-ways, tree removal is exempt from removal requirements. However, they are not exempt from mitigation requirements. The mitigation requirements stated as 1-to-1 ratio for tree circumference inches removed, meaning that any inches removed must be replanted. In order to do this, smaller trees may be replanted, but our code currently states that it's 2.5-inch trees in diameter are to be replanted. If replanting is not feasible within the city, a fee in lieu is accepted at a rate of $200 for a heritage tree per TC inch, or $100 for a protected tree's TC inch. Therefore, we will be removing a grand total of 39 protected trees and 5 heritage trees. Following the UDC guidelines, if the city paid our own fee in lieu amount, it would equate to $244,140, or require a replanting of 253 trees and the size of 2.5 inches in diameter. Due to the fact that these projects are both infrastructure upgrades and necessary to address the growing needs of our city, along with the fact that replanting within the easements is not feasible due to future line maintenance requirements, and keeping in mind that the city has very limited public land for replantings, the city would like to be a good steward of its natural resources and follow the spirit of the UDC, if not the exact letter of the code. In order to do this, we would like to host a free tree giveaway event. The previous year's free tree giveaway event was highly successful and well received by many residents, with many even asking who were unable to receive a tree last year if we would have more events in the future. Hosting a free tree giveaway event preserves and grows the urban tree canopy within the city, meets the intent of the tree mitigation requirements, and provides meaningful community benefit. In order to mitigate for these 2 city projects, 253 trees would need to be replanted. However, since we do not have the public land to do so, we are therefore recommending on hosting another free tree giveaway event. This would coincide with the city's Arbor Day celebration on Texas Arbor Day, which is this coming November 6th. The total cost to the city would be between $7,500 and $11,350. This cost would be for the sole purchase of trees, and the trees planted would be Texas native species only, and would be a mixture of 3 and 15-gallon trees. And at this time, I'll take any questions that the council may have. Thank you.
Questions? Go ahead.
I do feel like our tree policies are sometimes taxing, right? Especially in have all the development. So I'm okay with this, but I do want to go on record and say that, you know, we're studying this right now to see if there's any changes that can be made to our tree policy and to make it common sense so that we're not ourselves every time we need to replace a water line. Yeah, that's it. I really want to make it known that I do feel like we're kind of making the rule and then not exactly following it. It just doesn't feel right, you know. I know we're doing the tree giveaway, but it's still just right that we're not following the rules that we set for everybody.
Okay.
If we paid a fee, wouldn't we just be taking money out of city budget and then paying the city?
Correct. It would just be moving it to the tree mitigation fund.
So, go ahead.
Just a comment. I think the tree giveaway last year was a resounding success. Because we were also mitigating trees back then as well, that we did get trees planted within the city. City only has so much space to plant trees. And I think it's a good common sense approach as opposed to trying to pay ourselves for taking out our trees. But at least it's a common sense approach. And the residents get a chance to benefit from it in their places. Thank you.
But I don't think that we should pay ourselves, but I think that maybe we could offer a tree giveaway to somebody that couldn't afford the tree permit, you know, if we're gonna do that, possibly, I don't know. And I also am curious, do we know what percentage of the trees survive? Like, do we follow up after the tree giveaway, like, hey, how's that tree doing?
I can.
Not mandatory, I'm just curious if we do, or if it would be difficult to set up to see.
It wouldn't be difficult to set up because we have everyone's contact information from the last time. Yeah, yeah.
Back in, or?
We could easily set that up. I've heard from a couple residents, and all of the ones I have heard from, about 5, their trees are all doing really well.
Perfect.
Did we do this many trees? Did we do 253 trees last year?
During the last tree giveaway event, we did 125.
It went fast.
They went within the first 6 hours. All of them were gone
Reserved.
as soon as we opened up the queue.
And you had a pretty long wait list of others that,
Yes,
in
Yeah.
case somebody gave up their tree, that
we
they
had
would
10
take
on the
it.
wait list, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Any questions from anyone here tonight? Then from council, can I get a motion to approve a resolution authorizing a free tree giveaway as mitigation for removal of trees related to the Deets Elkhorn Road water line and shared pipeline projects and expenditure of the required funds?
So moved.
Jonathan, in a second.
Second.
Scott, any further discussion from council? With a motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion is approved. Thank you, Anthony. And that was the only consideration item that we had on the agenda tonight. We do have a workshop to discuss the fiscal year 2026-27 preliminary budget, the property tax rates, and budget updates. And Scott, I believe you had some comments you'd like to
Yeah,
make.
I'll try and kick this off for you, Mayor and Council. This is our final budget workshop before we receive the certified tax rules from the counties at the end of the month. And so tonight, Summer's going to walk through updates to the preliminary budget you've seen so far. The updates are relatively minor for the most part. And as you'll see during the presentation, this year's discussion isn't just about balancing next year's budget, but positioning the city for several increases down the line through a 5-year projection that we'll be planning for as well, including especially our fire and EMS agreement. Property taxes are, of course, the general fund's primary revenue source, so Summer's going to spend time going through the voter approval rate and its calculations under state law. The voter approval rate's the highest rate the council can adopt without a citywide election. So Summer will spend some time on that calculation. She'll also give you a staff recommendation based on that. So as we go forward, once council establishes the maximum tax rate for public notices purposes, we can reduce that rate before the budget's adoption, but we cannot increase it. So effectively, you're setting a ceiling on this budget's process. We'll be looking for that feedback tonight that we can bring to you for consideration at the next meeting. I think that's most of it. You'll see that the staff recommendation does include a tax rate increase for the next year, but not at the maximum. But someone will walk through all of that. But at the end of that, what we're looking for is direction from the council on where we want to set the maximum property tax rate for next year. So with that, I'll turn over to Summer.
He stole all my speaking notes, so I might be a little redundant.
The city
but-
managers do.
Yes, but good evening, Mayor and Council. For the record, I am Summer Fleming, Director of Finance. So tonight is our 4th budget workshop, and during the first 3 workshops, we've reviewed each department, the capital improvement program, and the utility fund in detail. And so this evening, I'll bring everything together by providing an overview of the preliminary fiscal year 26-27 budget and how all those pieces fit into the city's overall financial plan. But as Scott mentioned, the primary discussion this evening is the maximum tax rate staff should prepare for the August 6th resolution and proposed budget. That action won't adopt the tax rate, but it will establish the highest rate that council can consider during the public hearing process in September. So our agenda for the workshop, I'll begin with updates to the general fund since our last workshop. Then we'll review the city's key budget drivers and transition into that property tax discussion. We'll then review the utility fund before concluding with the remaining budget calendar and next steps. But I'll begin with the tax, briefly review the capital project funds. So the preliminary general fund revenue budget is approximately $11.9 million. That's an increase of 4.6% from the current year's adopted budget. Property tax remains the city's largest revenue source, followed by sales tax. Both categories are projected to increase in the budget and account for nearly all of the overall revenue growth. The remaining revenue categories, including franchise fees, interest earnings, fees and services, other revenues and transfers, they have relatively minimal changes compared to the current year budget. General fund expenditures total approximately $12.18 million. That's an increase of 7% from the current year's adopted budget. Personnel remains the city's largest expenditure category because local government is a service-based organization, and that proposed increase reflects compensation adjustments, employee benefit costs, and associated payroll taxes. The services category also increases. That's driven primarily by the contractual increase for fire and EMS services, partially offset by a reduction in IT software services. And then capital outlay and transfers also increase slightly as we continue to invest in equipment replacement and strategic capital needs. Since the last workshop, we've updated several expenditure items. The largest change is a $24,000 reduction in our TML risk pool contribution. That's based on the updated renewal amount. So staff recommends using those savings to fund several operational needs, including capital project tracking software, CDL tracking software, ADA compliance software, and a $20,000 IT contingency. That contingency would provide a modest cushion to address any unforeseen technology-related costs that may arise as we transition to that managed service provider model. The preliminary budget also includes about $4,800 for court security improvements. And those costs are funded with restricted court security funds, so they don't require use of unrestricted general fund resources. But after these revisions, the overall general fund expenditures increased $16,820 from the prior workshop.
Summer, I had a quick question on the IT contingency. So previously, we showed a significant reduction in the IT requirements. And this is just adding back 20,000 to that reduction. Is that correct?
Yes, it's just a contingency for any unforeseen costs that may arise as we transition to that managed service provider model. We've removed a lot of different services in there, so just making sure we've captured everything that we removed that'll be provided under this new model.
Okay.
So the preliminary budget includes several targeted investments that support operational efficiency, public safety, and service delivery. So on the operational side, we've included new public information request software, the CDL tracking software, and placeholder funding for offsite record storage while the facility's master plan is completed and a long-term record storage solution is identified. For public safety, we've included a replacement patrol vehicle and the first year of a 5-year TASER replacement program to help maintain essential equipment. The budget also supports public works operations with CDL training for 2 employees, along with investments in traffic management equipment, a shared vehicle for environmental and project managers, and the city's share of the safety coordinator. But overall, these investments focus on maintaining our existing service levels, improving operational efficiency, and replacing or enhancing equipment where needed. But if there are any of these items council would like staff to revisit before the proposed budget is filed, we would be happy to discuss those now. These are new items added this year.
Go ahead.
Did we get rid of one of the message boards? We have 2?
I
the other
believe one's on the
yeah.
utility.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Anybody else? Anybody here tonight? Questions?
Okay.
Sir, could you please? No, because people that are listening by live broadcast can't hear your comments. So I asked if you're going to make comments, could you make them from the microphone? I tell you what was your question?
I was going to ask why Chevy Tahoe and why Ford Bronco. I was getting some clarity on those decisions.
So the question that came up was why a Chevy Bronco and why a Ford Tahoe? Chevy Tahoe or Ford Bronco, is that?
So the Chevy Tahoe, the police department already has one that they use for patrol for sergeants. And I think they found that the size and, I don't know, what it offers for their supplies and everything is beneficial. So we wanted to replace one of our, they're like the Explorer size vehicles with a Tahoe. One of the vehicles is up for replacement, so we're just gonna replace it with a different type of vehicle, the Tahoe. And then the Ford Bronco, I believe that's replacing a Ford Escape that is maybe a 2012, 2013. It's a quite older vehicle. And I think they just looked at the size and the ruggedness of it for what the vehicle would be doing. And it would be shared with the environmental manager and the project manager.
Thanks, Summer.
Sure. All right, so the Strategic and Capital Projects Fund is funded by transfers from the general fund, and it's intended for one-time projects rather than ongoing operations. The preliminary budget totals approximately $740,000, and that includes 2 drainage capital improvement projects and the comprehensive plan update. Now, because this fund has accumulated approximately $519,000 from prior project savings and canceled projects, staff is able to use those available resources first, so that reduces the general fund transfer needed in the budget year to $220,000. And this slide summarizes the bond capital fund, which accounts for the roadway projects funded through the voter-approved general obligation bond program. Now, most of the project funding has already been appropriated in prior fiscal years. So as a result, the fiscal year 26-27 preliminary budget includes only one new appropriation. That's $315,000 for the Rolling Acres Trail reconstruction project. And the remaining projects continue to use previously approved bond appropriations. But with this preliminary budget, the city continues to maintain all reserves required by financial policy. The emergency reserve remains equal to 4 months of operating expenditures, and the budget stabilization reserve remains equal to 2 months. However, this budget includes a funding gap that is balanced through the use of unassigned fund balance. So we'll revisit that amount of fund balance needed after reviewing the property tax options, because the tax rate ultimately determines how much, if any, unassigned fund balance would be required to balance the budget. So before we get into the broader budget drivers, I want to provide a brief update on the proposed cost of living adjustment, or COLA. Since our June workshop, inflation indicators have decreased slightly. Despite those updates, staff continues to recommend a 2.5% cost of living adjustment, which is consistent with the updated figures. Now, staff will continue monitoring available economic data, including the Employment Cost Index when it's released later this month. But based on the information available, the preliminary budget includes that 2.5% COLA. I also want to mention that COLA is only one component of the city's compensation program. The preliminary budget also includes merit adjustments through the compensation plan. So employees who meet performance expectations would generally receive a combined increase of 4% that consists of the 2.5% COLA and a 1.5% merit adjustment. Employees who exceed or substantially exceed expectations may receive larger merit increases based on their performance evaluations. But for budgeting purposes, the merit component reflects the average cost of merit increases across the entire organization. But because merit increases are performance-based, not all employees will receive a merit increase. So now we can talk about the key budget drivers affecting both this year's budget and the city's long-term financial outlook. Now, the short-term issue is straightforward. Even with the approximately 3.5% increase in the M&O tax rate revenue provided under that unadjusted voter approval rate, the preliminary general fund budget still has that projected funding gap of almost $280,000. And so that gap can be addressed through additional revenue, expenditure reductions, or the use of fund balance. The longer-term challenge is sustaining the city's financial position as costs continue to increase. So the fire and EMS contract costs are projected to increase from $1.1 million this year to $2.7 million by fiscal year 29-30. The voter-approved GO bond debt service increases the INS portion of the tax rate. And then inflation continues to affect personnel, contracts, supplies, and other operating costs. So the tax rate discussion we're about to have is about balancing the fiscal year 26-27 budget while maintaining the city's long-term financial sustainability. So now that we've discussed all the budget drivers, I'll walk through the property tax options. But before comparing those options, it's helpful to understand what the two components that make up the city's property tax rate are. It consists of that maintenance and operating, or the M&O rate, and the interest and sinking, or INS rate. And so over the next several slides, you'll see both components because they each serve a different purpose in the city's budget. But with that distinction in mind, we can look at how the city's tax rate has changed over time. Over the last several years, the city's overall property tax rate has declined. While the INS rate fluctuates as debt is issued and repaid, the M&O rate has decreased significantly over the same period. Now, a lower tax rate does not necessarily mean lower property taxes. As taxable property values increase, the city may still collect more property tax revenue even with that lower tax rate, which has been the case for the city. But the reason I show this history is to demonstrate that council has consistently adopted tax rates below what state law would have allowed. And so those decisions created the unused tax rate capacity that we'll discuss on the next few slides. So what do those two tax components actually mean for the budget? Well, the general fund is supported by the maintenance and operations, or the M&O portion of the tax rate. Those revenues fund the city's day-to-day services like police, public works, administration, and the fire and EMS contract. And the interest and sinking, or the INS portion, is different. Those revenues can only be used to pay principal and interest on our voter-approved debt. So they cannot be used to fund operating expenditures. Only the M&O rate affects the city's operating budget. And as we move into the property tax discussion, the key decision before council is not what the final tax rate is, but what the maximum rate to be incorporated into the proposed budget should be. And that action will establish the highest rate council can consider during the adoption process. So this is probably the most technical slide in the presentation, but the policy implications are much more important than the calculation itself. So rather than focusing on the math, I just want to simplify the concept. In prior years, council adopted tax rates below that voter approval rate. And the state law allows a portion of that unused taxing authority to be carried forward for a limited period. And so that's referred to as the unused increment or foregone revenue. So it's not cash sitting in a reserve account, it's simply the unused taxing authority that the legislature allows cities to carry forward temporarily. And if it's not used before it expires, it is permanently lost. But this calculation shown comes directly from the comptroller's form. And the calculation results in approximately $823,000 of foregone revenue that the city chose not to collect by adopting tax rates below the voter approval rate. So that previous slide calculated the dollar amount of the city's available foregone revenue, and this slide converts that dollar amount into an unused increment rate. So to do that, we divide the available foregone revenue by the current year's taxable value. And that calculation results in an unused increment rate of approximately 2.86 cents. When that unused increment rate is added to our unadjusted voter approval rate of approximately 29.89 cents, you get the adjusted voter approval rate of 32.75 cents approximately. And that adjusted voter approval rate represents the maximum tax rate the city may adopt without an election. So the city's not required to adopt that rate, but it establishes the highest rate council may consider without voter approval. And if that available unused increment is not used within that statutory period, that taxing capacity expires and can no longer be recovered.
I have a question.
Yes.
Without that math, what is the highest tax rate the city could do without voter approval?
It would be that very bottom one, the,
0.29?
no, 0.3274.
Isn't the 0.3274 adding in the foregone revenue and increasing that rate?
It is. So you have the unadjusted voter approval rate, which is essentially that 3.5% cap that we're usually hear about. Then when you add in that unused increment, it gets you to the adjusted voter approval rate. That's actually the rate we can go to before we have to have an election.
But we've never done this before in recent years, at least since I've been here, correct?
We've never gone to that max voter approval rate.
But without recapturing foregone revenue, what would be, or what was, or what is the maximum voter approval rate? Is that poor question because I'm not good at math.
So the voter approval rate without that unused increment is the 0.2988.
Okay,
That's essentially what would give us 3.5% more M&O revenue based on the same homes.
and by using the foregone revenue, it bumps us up potentially to 0.32 without having voter approval.
That's correct.
Question as well. So has any fallen off, you know, capture it, we didn't raise it, and it's already too far? How many years did that happen? And then also, how much falls off this year, right? So you're saying use it all, but it banks back, what, 3 years?
Yes, it
So
does
if
the
you-
prior 3 years. So I don't recall how many years we've had this unused increment, because I think it is fairly new since I've started. Yeah, maybe 5 years that
2
they've
years of-
allowed this. Right, so we would have already lost probably the first 2 years. This looks back 3 years, and actually last year, we did use a really small portion of that unused increment over the unadjusted voter approval rate, and that's why year 3 actually has a negative revenue in there, because we did use some of it. But next year, so fiscal year 27, 28, that year 1 falls off, and then we would just have year 2, year 3, and then this current year that we're working on right now.
And that's what you've got added in, is just the 1 year? Or you've got the full 3 years?
This calculates the full 3 years lost
I thought,
revenue, and then the unused increment takes that revenue divided by the current taxable value and gives you what tax rate that would be to capture all that.
Following.
So then this slide compares the city's current tax rate with the preliminary tax rates calculated for fiscal year 26-27. Now, these are based on preliminary taxable values, not the certified values, which we won't have until July 25th. But the first column shows the current adopted tax rate and serves as the baseline for comparison. The second column is the no new revenue rate. That rate is calculated under the Texas Tax Code. And while the no new revenue rate is intended to generate approximately the same overall property tax revenue from existing properties, it doesn't provide the same amount of general fund operating revenue. Because as the INS portion increases to pay voter-approved debt service, the M&O portion decreases, which would result in a larger general fund funding gap. The third column reflects staff's recommended tax rate. It uses the unadjusted voter approval rate plus a portion of the available unused increment. That additional revenue closes the projected general fund funding gap while preserving a portion of the unused increment for next year before it expires. And then the final column, the furthest on the right, it shows the maximum adjusted voter approval rate. So this option uses all of the available unused increment this year, and that would generate additional revenue beyond what is needed for the current budget while capturing all of the unused taxing capacity before it expires. Yes.
So you're not, from the previous slide of 17, you're not, or y'all are not recommending 32-cent adjusted voter approval rate, because that's the maximum we could do to recoup prior lost revenue. That's what you're not recommending.
Our recommended rate and what some of the further slides will show is at that middle voter approval rate with some of the unused increment. And you'll hear why, but it's also not recommended not to go to the maximum because that does provide council the most flexibility between now and adoption. Under either option, you can still adopt a lower rate. You're not bound by either one of those rates. You can always go lower, you just can't go any higher.
And my second question was, you said a portion for the recommended column. Are you gonna cover, is there an explanation later, or is now the time to ask what that portion is? Because if you're gonna cover it later, I'll just let you do it then.
I mean, I will talk a lot more about it actually,
Okay.
but I don't specifically say like how much of that. I think Julie did the calculation. It's about 29% of the unused increment. Now, some of it would be lost next year, but we would still retain some that we could use next year also. But then with those three rates, the lower portion of the slide illustrates the estimated impact on the average homeowner under each of the tax rate scenarios. So under the staff recommendation, the estimated annual increase to the average tax bill is $193. And under that maximum adjusted voter approval rate, the estimated increase is $342. Those increases reflect both components of the tax rate. The part of the increase is for the INS rate that just repays our general obligation bond debt. And then the remainder reflects the M&O rate that would support city operations. And so these are preliminary tax rates based on preliminary values. The actual tax rates will be recalculated using certified values, but the concept still remains the same, using the unadjusted voter approval rate with a portion of the unused increment to balance the budget, or using the full maximum voter approval rate to give council the most flexibility.
So just so I'm completely clear, so it's going up, your recommendation is 29%. If it was 33 1/3%, then that would capture the full first year that would fall off next year, right? Because it's 3 years. But so you left like 15% of the first year's untouched, so that'll expire, and then the clock starts on the second 2 years.
Okay, so that's what he said. Yeah, we would have roughly 15% left.
Okay, all right, I understand.
Yeah. Some of it would fall off, but we would still retain some.
What is the budget shortfall for the,
No. Under the no new revenue rate, it would be,
couple 100,000 if you just look at,
so at the unadjusted voter approval rate, taking that full 3.5%, we're at 280,000 deficit. Going all the way down to the no new revenue rate, yeah, it would be much larger, because we're losing a lot of the M&O revenue because it's transferring to the INS.
we do no new revenue last year?
Not last year, not the year before. It may have been maybe 3 years ago.
I thought last year we didn't, but the 3 years prior to that, we did do no new revenue.
There was
right?
one year we did, and then once we had the 5-year financial plan put together and we could see the impact, long-term impact of that, we went away from that. And I know last year we just adopted the same tax rate as the previous year.
That's what it was, okay.
But it was still higher than the no new revenue rate.
Okay.
So when they calculate the no new revenue rate, that is bringing in the same amount of property tax revenue, and that includes your interest in sinking. So when they're calculating that, that means all of the property tax revenue. So because
One
we are
goes up,
taking out more debt,
The other goes down.
yeah, the INS portion's gonna go up, so the M&O will drop even lower than what it is this year.
I believe, Julie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the recommended rate, effectively balances this year's budget. So just eyeballing the two figures, we lose $770,000 on top of the $278 that we're already, the preliminary budget already. So you're looking at close to $1 million deficit
Roughly.
at the
'cause-
no new revenue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you would still get a little bit from new properties.
Right.
But,
And the big picture is we're trying to catch up to that ESD4 contract. We don't want that to run too many years out and then we can't pay the bills.
that is a major factor in the 5-year financial plan.
Operating driver, yes.
Yes. So now that we've seen all the rates, we can consider what would happen if council directed staff to incorporate all the available unused increment into the proposed budget. So that would be the maximum voter approval rate. This approach would fully utilize the remaining unused taxing authority before it expires and generate the greatest amount of revenue beginning this year. So the benefit is a stronger long-term financial position and maximum flexibility over the 5-year planning horizon. The trade-off is that residents experience the largest increase in the average tax bill during the first year, approximately $342 for the average home. But this slide shows the financial impact of that decision over the next 5 years. So because the city generates additional revenue beginning in fiscal year 26-27, the 5-year plan maintains both policy reserves throughout the period, and the city would be projected to end fiscal year 2031 with about $1.9 million in unassigned fund balance, providing that additional flexibility to address future financial needs. So this option provides the largest increase to the average tax bill in the first year, but the annual increases are much smaller in subsequent years. But ultimately, this option would prioritize the city's long-term financial flexibility by preserving reserves and maintaining available fund balance over that 5-year planning horizon.
Does that projection into the future assume that we're always recapturing?
It just assumes that, well, next year maybe
The assumption on this is to go to the voter approval rate
every year.
Okay.
Have effectively the catch-up this year, and then basically that 3.5% every year after that.
Yes. So now we can compare that to staff's recommendation. Rather than incorporating all of the available unused increment, staff recommends incorporating only the amount necessary to balance the fiscal year 26-27 budget. This approach balances the budget without relying on fund balance, while reducing the first-year impact on taxpayers to a $193 increase. Now, the trade-off is that a portion of that available unused increment would expire, resulting in less revenue over the 5-year planning horizon. But under this approach, the city maintains both policy reserves for most of the planning period. However, by fiscal year 2031, the 5-year plan projects that all of the available unassigned fund balance would be used, and the city would begin drawing on the budget stabilization reserve a little bit. The reserve is being used for its intended purpose, which is to smooth out long-term financial pressures, but the emergency reserve continues to be maintained in accordance with city policy. Now, this option represents a balanced approach by limiting the first-year tax impact while maintaining the city's financial stability over that 5-year planning period. So if we return to the preliminary general fund budget, this slide shows the impact of the staff recommendation on property tax revenue. So compared to the unadjusted voter approval rate used in the preliminary budget, this recommendation generates approximately $280 in additional general fund revenue. That additional revenue eliminates the budget shortfall from the June workshop, and it allows the city to balance the budget without relying on any unassigned fund balance. So this slide summarizes the preliminary budget using that staff recommendation. The recommended tax rate provides the revenue needed to balance the budget. The operating surplus is used to fund planned transfers to the Equipment Replacement Fund and the Strategic and Capital Projects Fund, as well as one-time capital purchases, resulting in a balanced budget with no surplus being added to fund balance. So this approach, it aligns recurring revenues with the recurring expenditures, and it funds City Council's strategic priorities and required reserve policies. So that brings us to the direction staff is seeking before preparing the proposed budget. The 3 approaches are summarized on this slide. So tonight, staff is requesting council's direction on the maximum property tax rate to include in the August 6th resolution, and that maximum rate will be incorporated into the proposed budget and the required public notices. But as a reminder, that action, it does not adopt the city's final tax rate. It just establishes the highest rate that council can consider during the budget adoption process. So council may ultimately adopt that rate or any lower rate in September after completing the public hearings and final budget discussions. So staff's recommended budget is based on the preliminary approval rate plus just a portion of the available unused increment because it balances the budget for fiscal year 26-27. It avoids reducing fund balance and it limits the first year impact on taxpayers. But then council also has the option of directing staff to use that maximum adjusted voter approval rate on the far left column. That one would provide the greatest flexibility during the remainder of the budget process because council could still adopt any lower rate that it chooses. It also fully utilizes the remaining unused increment before it expires. So the decision before council is whether to direct staff to prepare the proposed budget using only the amount of unused increment necessary to balance the budget or to incorporate all the available unused increment before it expires. Either option will preserve council's ability to adopt a lower tax rate in September following the public hearings.
Any comments or questions?
Did she cover everything you wanted?
Yeah, very thorough, thanks, Senator. And I think it was mentioned, I just want to clarify, so in the process, we have increased the interest payments related to our road bond, and that takes a certain portion of the budget. Is that correct so far?
Takes a certain portion of the tax rate.
And then,
Yes.
at the same time, that decreases our operating budget while we are seeing a significant increase in our fire and EMS contract. It's really those 2 parameters that are really having an impact on our tax rate right now. Is that
I would say that's
fairly
accurate.
accurate?
Yes.
And then you mentioned it, so tonight, what you're really looking for is just a consensus from council. This is a workshop on what we would like to see as the maximum tax rate. And I believe it's at the August 7th meeting, our next meeting. You will bring that back as a resolution for us to establish the maximum tax rate.
Yes, August 6th resolution will have the
August 6th.
final calculated tax rates with the certified taxable values. So it'll have the actual no new revenue rate, unadjusted voter approval rate, and that maximum voter approval rate. And then we will be setting the maximum tax rate council will consider for adoption. We
But
will also
tonight-
incorporate that into the proposed budget and public notices. Yes.
I guess my point, tonight, it's what do we think as a council? We'll provide that back to Summer and Julie, and then you'll bring that back to us at the next council meeting for us to formally establish what the maximum tax rate is.
Yes.
Okay? I like the staff recommended tax rate. I think it's a lot of analysis, and you laid it out very well. Thank you for all the time you put into the presentation tonight, because I thought it was very clear, and even I could understand it. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm absolutely loving the words balanced budget. Your work has made it very simple for me to understand. And I also like the idea of going with the 30%, I guess, the staff recommended. I think you'll have put us where we need to be without going too far. I think that we always stand the chance of losing a little bit of money. It's almost like gambling to some extent, but we're not losing it all. We still have a nest egg over there. Correct me if I'm wrong on that thought process. That's good, Julie. So I also like the staff recommended rate.
Summer, I also approve of the staff recommended rate. Analyzed and studied and positioned.
I'm the same. I like the staff recommended tax rate. I don't like, an extra $300 on everybody's tax bill, but also don't like ESD4 raising. Not a whole lot that can be done. We negotiated that contract down from what their original ask, which would see us, probably using all of it right now and then struggling in year 3 and 4 to try to figure out how to pay for the rest. To necessary.
Same. I agree.
Okay. I think that's the direction we needed. Well, if there are no additional questions regarding the general fund or property tax discussion. I'll transition to the utility fund. So unlike the general fund, the utility fund is an enterprise fund, and it's supported through utility rates and fees rather than property taxes. We'll begin by looking at the utility's operating performance under this preliminary budget, which measures whether operating revenues are sufficient to support operating costs. One important note is that not all operating revenues are available to fund the day-to-day operations. Debt service fees and the impact fees are legally restricted and can only be used to repay debt or growth-related capital improvements. So after removing those restricted revenues, approximately $6.1 million remain available to support utility operations. Operating expenses are projected at approximately $6.34 million, resulting in an operating shortfall of about $250,000 before depreciation. After including depreciation, the operating loss increases to approximately $1.45 million. Now, I do want to mention that these results should be viewed in the proper context. This analysis does not include $450,000 of estimated investment earnings, and depreciation is a non-cash accounting expense, so it does not affect the utility's ability to meet its day-to-day financial obligations. This slide serves as one indicator of a long-term rate sufficiency. Now, consistent with the city's adopted 5-year financial plan, a water rate adjustment is currently projected in fiscal year 27-28 to help keep pace with the increasing operating costs and maintain long-term financial sustainability. But that projected adjustment would be reviewed by council as part of a future budget process. So operating expenditures are projected to increase about 4% over the current year's adopted budget. Personnel increases by about $240,000, reflecting proposed compensation adjustments, benefit costs, and staffing changes. Supplies, maintenance, and operations decrease slightly as one-time expenditures included in the current year budget are removed. Services is increasing primarily because of investment in operational support, safety, and system monitoring. And then capital purchases is also decreasing compared to the current year because several larger equipment purchases occurred in this current year. Now, since the July 2nd workshop, one significant update has been to add a utility technician position. This addition provides additional operational capacity to support system maintenance, infrastructure inspections, and daily utility operations as the system continues to grow. And the total impact of this update is approximately $65,000. So looking at all the investments included in the preliminary utility fund budget, one of the largest new initiatives is that satellite leak detection. This investment allows us to proactively identify underground leaks that may otherwise go undetected. Finding leaks earlier helps reduce water loss, improve system reliability, and better prioritize repair work. Other investments include the utility's share of the safety coordinator, a valve exercising machine, easement gate improvements, a portable message board, generator trailers, a replacement pump for the Falls lift station, and that new utility technician position. Are there any of these items council would like to discuss before the proposed budget is filed?
I thought we were going to get back, staff was going to get back to us on that satellite.
Well, I think that we were gonna put it in the budget, and then they're gonna get back to us before they cut the check for 63,000, because we wanna know how it works and what, sure that somebody else has used it first. We don't wanna be the guinea pigs. And if we decide against it, then we have the 63,000 for just leak detection, which is what I was gonna suggest. Maybe we take the satellite, and until council agrees that we're gonna spend the money on the satellite, can we just call it leak detection or something less caustic? Because it still just, I know there's probably science behind it, but it sounds like snake oil to me, right? Yeah.
Have you seen any of the satellite leak detection results?
I don't know that, have we had a demo or anything yet? I don't know that we have yet. I know that it's in the works.
So we've gotten some preliminary information. Grant's been working with one of the companies as well as a couple of users that have it. But you're right, council member, as part of this budget, if you choose to include the $62,000 in the budget as an appropriation, we did make that commitment to come back to the council before we approve any contracts.
That's correct. And all of the companies that staff has reached out to, all of them are willing to provide a presentation to City Council because they know this type of technology generates a lot of questions.
Tell them to come with a leak, right? Tell them to go ahead and find a leak and be like, here's this one on,
Bring your
you
own
know,
leak.
back here on Pimlico, there you go.
Safety coordinator is the outside consultant fee.
That's the proposal, yes, and that would be split between the two funds.
Anything else? Okay.
Okay, then we'll move on to the Water Capital Improvement Program. So most of these projects are multi-year investments that have been appropriated over several budget cycles and are now in various stages of design or construction, and some have been completed. The preliminary budget includes approximately $5.2 million in additional appropriations. The largest is for $4.8 million for the elevated storage tank. The budget also includes $400,000 for the ground storage tank at plant number 4. So with the exception of that ground storage tank at plant number 4, all of the projects shown on the slide are underway, or as I mentioned, completed. The wastewater CIP remains focused on 2 major projects. The wastewater treatment plant Phase 1 expansion represents the largest investment and supports future treatment capacity. And the second project installs a new sewer line and ultimately allows the Falls Lift Station to be decommissioned. And now this slide demonstrates why it's important to look beyond those annual operating results. Overall, net position is projected to increase slightly to approximately $21.3 million. Although the water and wastewater capital funds decrease, those decreases are expected because the funds are being used for capital improvements and infrastructure. So as those funds are spent, the value effectively shifts from cash balances into completed infrastructure assets. And that's why the net investment in capital assets increases significantly during the year. The utility also maintains its equipment replacement fund, debt service reserve, and emergency reserve. So taken together, this reflects a financially stable utility system that continues investing in long-term assets without compromising required reserves. Now, this preliminary budget includes estimated fee changes for those fees that are recalculated annually. For water customers, the estimated monthly fee increase is $2.44. Most of that increase is associated with the debt service fee, which supports previously approved capital improvements and the related debt obligations. That increase is partially offset by a decrease in the surface water fee and the capital reserve fee. And for wastewater customers, the estimated monthly fee increase is 94 cents, which is also driven by debt service. But that concludes the utility fund overview. I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the utility fund before I move into the next steps.
Questions? Any questions from anyone here tonight?
Okay. Well, we are entering the final phase of the annual budget process. So the next significant milestone is July 25th, when we expect to receive the certified property values from the appraisal districts. Those values allow us to finalize the no new revenue rate, voter approval rate, unused increment rate, and the revenue estimates used in the proposed budget. So at the August 6th council meeting, staff will present those final calculated tax rates based on the certified values, and council will be asked to consider a resolution establishing that maximum tax rate for notice purposes and setting the required public hearing dates. On August 17, the proposed fiscal year 26-27 budget will be formally filed with the city secretary's office. And that document will incorporate any direction received from council, as well as updates resulting from the certified tax roll. Council will then hold another budget workshop on August 20th before the public hearings scheduled for September 17. And following those public hearings, council will consider the first reading of both the budget ordinance and the tax rate ordinance. And then the second readings are scheduled for a special meeting on September 22nd. So tonight is really a transition from budget development into budget adoption. Most of the policy discussions have now occurred, and the remaining meetings focus on refining the numbers, satisfying our statutory requirements, and preparing the budget and tax rate for formal adoption. So to conclude tonight's presentation, staff appreciates council's discussion and direction this evening. Based on that direction, staff will prepare the August 6th maximum tax rate resolution using the staff recommended rate and incorporate that rate into the proposed budget and public notices. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Anybody? Summer, I know we said it, but I mean, that was exceptional. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Julie.
I know you got a good team behind you, or a
Julie
great
and
team.
Scott helped me while I was out on vacation, so yes. It's a team effort.
But I just want to pass along, what a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that completes our workshop item for tonight. Do any council members have any announcements that they'd like to make for tonight's meeting? I have two announcements I'd like to talk about. So one, we had a significant rain event that happened over the last couple days. And two pieces of that. One, we had 4 road closures that were still in effect. 3 of those have now opened. The only road closure that we have in the city right now is Battle Intense. And my guess is that Battle Intense will remain closed for probably another 2 or 3 days. We tracked the water that was coming down the Cibolo, and I believe that we had about a 25-foot raise in the water level coming down the Cibolo. It was incredible. At that point on Battle Intense, it was probably 200 yards across that the water covered. And if you saw the bridge at Ralph Fair Road, where the Cibolo goes underneath, we were at the peak about 5 to 7 feet from touching the bottom of the roadway. So we had a lot of water. What I'd like to add to that is the exceptional job that our city staff did responding to this event. As I drove around on yesterday morning, there is no place that I didn't go in the city that I didn't run into a public safety or a public works or some other city staff employee that was out monitoring the roads and all of the low water crossings that we had across the city. And I know that our water and our wastewater crews were out ensuring, as our systems were flooded, ensuring that those systems kept operational during that time frame. And then we had individuals that were here overnight monitoring the conditions to ensure, because we didn't know what the rain events were last night, but keeping an eye on everything. I'd just like to pass along what a great job that they did ensuring that our city and all of our residents were taken care of and we provided a safe environment. So thank you, Scott, and please pass it on to the team. Thank them. Second announcement I have, we put the announcements out that we're about to start the reconstruction of Ammon Road, or correction, Elkhorn Road, the one right out here. And as part of that, we're going to hold a town hall meeting to provide the information that'll happen as part of construction and the detours and the traffic routing and the phases of construction. That town hall meeting will happen in this room on July 29th from 4 to 6 p.m. So if you do have questions, concerns, or just want to know about the project, please join us July 29th, 4 to 6 p.m. Scott, that's all I had. Anything else that we need to add?
No, sir, just want to echo your comments. I would prefer we had fewer opportunities to show staff rising to the occasion, but rise they did, so thank you.
Is there any council member that has anything that they would like added to a future agenda? Tonight we will go into executive session pursuant to section 551.101 of the Texas Open Meetings Act. Under Texas Government Code, a quorum of the governing body hereby convenes into closed session. And this will be under section 551.074 personnel matters. And the city council will meet in closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.074 personnel matters to deliberate the process and options for filling the vacancy of the city's secretary. And for this executive session, of course, we need all of council and the city manager, and that would be it. I would ask everybody else to please leave the council chambers here. I anticipate that this will take us about 30 minutes to finish this executive session. And then we will come back into open session again and close out the meeting. And Amanda, I have the time now is 7:44, and we are in executive session. How about now? Can you hear me? We're all good? How about now? Is it just we're not,
Hey, we got Scott. Maybe he fixed it.
we're not streaming? Is that the problem? How about now? All right. Amanda, I have the time is 8:06 and we are back in open session. During our time frame in executive session, we did have a discussion on filling the vacancy for the city secretary. And from council, could I get a motion to approve a resolution for the appointing of Amanda Valdez as the city secretary of the city of Fair Oaks Ranch, Texas?
So moved.
Second.
From Scott, we have a motion, and from Dale, a second. And council, any discussion that y'all would like to?
One of the,
Do you go ahead?
I want to say that in the time that I've known you, I have never known somebody as capable and willing to go ahead and help as you are. And I think that you're going to be an amazing city secretary for the city of Fair Oaks.
As the greenest elected official in the history of elected officials, you definitely walked me through everything and got me up to speed, gave me all the resources. Above and beyond, you know, I just really appreciate all the work that Princess did. Every project that comes up, any question. Look forward to more of it.
Amanda, you were extremely helpful in, even with the planning and zoning. For many, many years. And the city council assistance that you give everyone and help. And one time there weren't holes in my agenda, right? Or in the package, but you took the time to run in the back and punch holes in it so it would fit. And so it's those little things in your good service, and we really appreciate you and your good job.
My 3 years, your professionalism, your experience, helpfulness, kindness is apparent from day one on a daily basis. This is probably one of the easiest things that I've had to decide on. It's a no-brainer from my standpoint.
Amanda, I think we're all excited that you decided to apply for the position. And we really look forward to working with you in the future as our city secretary. So from council, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion is approved. During the announcements, I forgot to mention one thing as part of the rain event that we went through, is that I did sign a local disaster declaration for the city today, and that has been processed through Bexar County, through their emergency operations cell, and has already been submitted to the Texas Division of Emergency Management. And really, this is to cover all of the hours, all the workload, the equipment that's had to be used, and we still have a lot of cleanup and probably some repairs to do as part of our recovery from this effort. As the mayor's signing it, it's good for 7 days, and we'll see if we need to extend that at a future time. which would take a full council approval to extend beyond 7 days. All right, that concludes all we have for tonight's meeting. Amanda, our city secretary, anything that we missed?
No, sir. Thank you.
And Scott, anything else we need to add?
Nothing further.
I have the time now is 8:10 and we are adjourned.